moms have had, you guys can be excused, and all kids can be excused to go do your project. That is just a sampling of all the fabulous stories that are out there. Moms, what you do makes a difference. Even when we mess up as moms, God is faithful. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about now with Sylvie and I. We just have some thoughts we want to share with you.
So a few weeks ago, the ladies went up to Lake Tahoe for the women's retreat, and we had the opportunity to study through the entire book of Esther.
And you were there.
So for those of you who, maybe it's been a while since you read Esther, maybe you've never read Esther, just a quick overview of it is that Esther, the book of Esther, takes place in the Old Testament. It was during a time when several million Jews were living in the land of Persia, and there was one young woman named Esther who was forced into more or less an X-rated beauty pageant against her will, but the Lord was provident over her life, over the things that happened in and through her, and ultimately used Esther to save these 2 million or so Jews living in Persia. During our study of Esther, we came up with 3 major themes, and we're going to touch on a couple of those today, and we're going to see how they apply to motherhood.
And our theme was a call to courage, and if being a mother doesn't need courage, I don't know what does, through all the different stages. Our 3 things that we talked about were place, position, and providence. I love how God's word is applicable even today. Something that was so long ago and that happened so long ago has meaning for us today, not just for mothers, although that's our emphasis today, but for wherever you are in your life today. Esther has some direction for you.
So, taking a look first at the idea of place. The Jews, before we even opened up the book of Esther at the women's retreat, we saw that the Jews, God's people, were not in the place they should have been. 17 years prior to the book of Esther beginning, the Jews were taken by captivity into the land of Babylon, Persia. This is, if you remember Daniel in the lion's den, this was during that time. And these Jews were taken by force into captivity. However, they were given the opportunity to return to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls, rebuild the temple, restore worship, and to renew their people group. Out of 2 million Jews living there in Persia, only about 60,000 of them actually went back to Jerusalem. And so you have to stop and think, why? You were given the opportunity to return to the promised land. This is the land flowing with milk and honey. This is the land that God promised to Abraham, a land that God set apart for them. So when given the opportunity, why would you not return to the land that God promised you? So we looked into a few possible reasons why they didn't. One of them, they had grown comfortable living in Persia. Although these Jews were brought to Persia by force, it had now become their home. They had built homes, businesses. They were immersed in the Babylonian culture. It was comfortable to them. Maybe some of them stayed because of fear or anxiety of the unknown. What would it be like to trek back to Jerusalem? What's waiting for us there? Maybe some of them had been overcome with lethargy. Oh man, the temple was destroyed. What's up? I don't have the energy for that. So many other things going on. I'm old. But I think for a lot of them, it was an issue over prosperity. They had been in Persia for so long. They had become quite wealthy. They were comfortable. Their businesses were doing well. They didn't want to leave all their hard work. And so I think, before we even opened up the book of Esther, Esther and her uncle Mordecai, who are two of our main characters, they were two of those millions that decided to stay in their comforts in Persia instead of returning to the place that God had prepared for them. And one of these main themes is thinking, Lord, where's the place I'm in right now in my life? Am I where I'm comfortable? Am I where I'm prosperous? I've worked so hard to get where I am. I'm too tired to make any changes. Where are you?
Also, the idea that they had acclimated and assimilated into their culture so much that they had lost their distinctiveness as Jews. Mordecai tells Esther not to tell anyone that she's a Jew, but nobody knew that Mordecai was a Jew either, so they'd lost their distinctiveness. And it makes me think, when I go out and about, have I lost my distinctiveness? Have I, and I don't. I mean, I'm not one. My Jesus hat is on all the time. I don't just talk about Jesus when I'm in church. It's a part of who I am. I'm a teacher, and a lot of my parents, they want their kids in Christian school, but they may not be pursuing a relationship with Jesus themselves. And I talk to them as if they are, because my Jesus is such a part of who I am and the way he's changed and formed me. But it's a question for you guys. As you go about your daily lives, your daily work, going to the store, going to the gym, whatever it might be, is there something distinctive about you that draws people to you because of the Jesus in you?
So I was talking with Jack, my husband. I was like, oh man, usually Mother's Day messages are supposed to be encouraging and uplifting, and the Lord's just putting this in front of my face, and I'm like, Lord, my place as a mom, my position as mom. I don't know about you, moms, but I know that there's been times in my short stint, 13 years of being a mom, where I've wanted what I wanted. I wanted my comfort over what was best for my children. Go put on that screen. I need alone time. Maybe there was times where I lacked the courage to stand up for my children out of fear of what my kids' friends' parents might say. Maybe the rules that the Lord had convicted me about for my children, I shied away from because of the fighting that my kids had against it. And I backed down. I'm seeing these same themes that the Jews struggled with, and why were they not in the place that they should have been? I see that in my own motherhood. Sometimes I'm too lethargic to stand firm in my motherhood. Sometimes I am too stressed out. Sometimes I am so full of anxiety to be courageous in what I need to be courageous in. Sometimes I am exhausted of constantly having to be on high alert because of the culture that is trying to invade the thoughts of my children. It's exhausting to be a mom. And I know I've made a ton of mistakes. There are things I regret saying to my children. There's regrets of what I did not say to my children. But here's the encouragement, ladies. And this is what we see in Esther. Even though Esther was not in the place she should have been, even though she was thrust into the position of queenship against her will, the Lord still used her in that place and in that position, even if she had not obeyed in the first place. The Lord has not forgotten you. The Lord is not done with you. He is a restorer of the years that have been wasted. And I see here in Isaiah 49, this is God speaking to his people through Isaiah. Can a mother forget her nursing baby? Moms, you know, when you're nursing a newborn, your body literally craves your baby. Can a mom forget her nursing baby? Even if it was possible, God says, I will not forget you. God will not forget you wherever you are at in your motherhood. God has not forgotten you, whether you have followed him or not, whether you're in the place you should be or not. He has not forgotten you, because he says here in Isaiah, because your names are engraved on my own hands. At everything he does, you're there. He'll use you in the place that you're in. And he's not done with you. The regrets you might have, the things you wish you would have done differently, it's not over. He still seeks to use you.
I just want to emphasize the idea. Sometimes our understanding of God is not accurate, because our finite minds just can't understand him, and especially because we are so hard on ourselves, ladies. We wear lots of hats. We work. We mother our children. We mother their friends. We serve in the church. We have friendships that we want to contribute to. So sometimes we're the hardest on ourselves. God is faithful. He is faithful, and any mistakes that we make do not nullify his faithfulness. He is faithful. And it's just this whole idea that we cannot totally, we just don't have the ability to understand the phrase I used earlier. This will make Jack laugh. It's from Dallas Willard, because he knows I've been reading Dallas Willard. The fact that God is all-sufficient, self-sustaining, a being that cannot not be. So don't beat yourself up. He is faithful, and he will use every mistake we make for his glory if we let him.
So in the place that Esther ultimately got to, she was forced into the Bachelor XXX edition, and she won. And in that place, she was thrust into the position of queenship. She was missing out on the glories and the peace and the joy of worshiping in the temple of God back in Jerusalem. She's missing out on the sacrifice of worship there, where she should have been years prior. But here she is in a position she doesn't want to be in. And I don't know about you ladies, but there's been times where I have not wanted to be a mom. I was done, because I was wanting what I wanted. But here we see Esther, and her uncle Mordecai comes to know this plan where Haman, the Hitler of the Old Testament, seeking to annihilate all of the Jews, his plan comes to Mordecai's knowledge. Mordecai relays that message to Esther and says, "You're the queen now, do something." And she had a choice. She's in a position she didn't want to be in. But she was thrust into this choice.
And I want to read this. Initially, Esther said, "Oh, no, I can't. Because if you go before the king and he hasn't called you to him, then 99% chance you're going to die. So I can't go before him. He hasn't called me for 30 days. And Mordecai said this to her. If you keep quiet, this is Esther 4:14. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place. But you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this." Now, we've all heard that last part, for such a time as this, for such a time as this. But what jumps out to me in that verse is the part before it. Deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place. God's providence. God's providence. He doesn't need us to make his plans come to place, but he invites us to participate. And it's an invitation so we can say yes or no. But when we say yes, in mothering, in fathering, in friendship, in our jobs, when we say yes to participating in his plan, then we just get to see firsthand that providence of God, this how sovereign he is, and providence, that he's got it, that he's in control.
And so we see, if you know the book of Esther, right? She chooses to go into the king, to stand up for her people, the Jews, even though she wasn't in the place she should have been, even though she was in a position she didn't want. She chose to follow the leading of the Lord, and she chose to do it afraid.
What's that quote that you sent me from Instagram that was so amazing?
Instagram,
because it's
I
so
love it.
good.
Esther teaches us that the souls attached to our obedience are worth doing it afraid.
That'll preach. Is that not good? Our obedience, the choices we make, there are souls, our kids, our spouses, our friends, people we don't even know that are attached to our obedience. And it's worth doing it afraid.
So, ladies, this is the encouragement from Esther. You may be asked to do things you don't want to do, but our obedience to the Lord needs to be complete, not partial. Our children are watching. I think Jocelyn said it so beautifully. She watched the example of her mother. Children follow by example more than word. We all know that. So model it for your children, your grandchildren, all of the children in your life, even as adults. And it's worth doing things afraid because you know that the Lord is leading you to do it, and he's faithful.
So we've talked about position and place, and I want to talk a little bit about providence. God's providence is all through the book of Esther. We can't even get into all the details. We spent a whole weekend digging into this. But I want to give a personal example of providence. Many of you know my daughter Alicia got married a few weeks ago, and I sent out kind of a desperate, frantic text message to some of my friends in the church to pray because the forecast was for huge rain, like one of those 80% chance of rain days. And my prayer wasn't don't rain, because I want it to be a beautiful day for a wedding, and I don't want them to spend money on the tent. No, my prayer was, God, don't let it rain. Let this show Alicia your power and how much you love her. That's why I wanted it not to rain. And I had people literally across the country praying for this. Well, it rained and it stopped, and it rained and it stopped, and I was bummed. I was like, Lord, I wanted you to show yourself to Alicia and to her friends, the people there that don't know you. I wanted you to show yourself. And I was it's like, God, I trust you, and I know you're sovereign, but why? That's kind of where I was in understanding his providence. Kara doesn't even know this. Oh, she's out with the kids. Kara doesn't even know this, but she had sent me a Marco Polo. Isn't God so awesome? Every time we needed it not to rain, it didn't rain. And I stopped, and I thought back about the wedding day and the ceremony when she needed to be walking outside, and each one of her bridesmaids was part of the procession to walk her to the next one. Not only did it not rain, but the sun shone. And because there was so much rain, it was like diamonds and sparkly everywhere. It was beautiful. When we were doing pictures and there's a little appetizer hour, everyone was able to be on this beautiful back deck looking out over this little field of diamonds because it had been pouring right beforehand. Through most of the pictures, no rain. At the very end, it was a very gentle sprinkle, just enough so that she could have really cute pictures with umbrellas with her husband. The dance floor kept flooding. My friends that were helping me out there with these big mops, getting the brooms, getting the rain off of the floor. But when it was time to dance, there was no rain or water on that cement. And I realized that's a bigger deal than not raining at all. That God showed up so big, and I almost didn't see it because I wasn't looking hard enough for how he showed up. It wasn't what I was looking for. So moms, God has put you in a place, in a position. He is provident with your mistakes, in your exhaustion. When your words are too sharp or your words are the wrong words, ask forgiveness. Let your kids see you go to Jesus. He is provident. He is sovereign. He has a plan if we're looking for it. Surround yourself with people, which Haman did not do, that's a whole other story, that point you to Jesus and that can remind you of what he's doing when you can't see it because you want what you wanted, how you wanted it your way. God is provident. You have been placed in the position that you are. He is going to use you. And I want to end with this scripture. Where did it go? This is Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. Walk in humble pride as a mom. Walk in humble pride everyone else, because the message of Esther isn't just for women, it's for all of us. God is provident. He has a plan. Let's participate with him. Worship team, would you come up?